acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands across Australia and beyond, for which we all join today. So I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people with us here. So we recognise their enduring connection to country, culture and community, and their vital role in learning and knowledge sharing.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's Pascal Connecting Urban and Rural Learning Initiatives online forum, Learning for Change, Social Learning and Innovation in the Fiji Landcare Life Project. I'm Dr. Leonie Wheeler, Honorary CEO of the Australian Learning Communities Network and Coordinator of Pascal International Observatories Connecting Urban and Rural Learning Initiatives, which is part of the Pascal Learning Cities Network Special Interest Group. I'm delighted to be your MC today. And we have a very warm welcome for our Pascal colleagues and our ALCN colleagues and other colleagues from the UK, South Africa, Benin, Bangladesh, and Australia. Today, Dr. Mary Johnson will provide an overview of a 6-year Fiji Landcare research project funded by the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research. The project aims to strengthen smallholder farmer livelihoods in Fiji through improved food and fibre production, sustainable natural resource management, and collaborative learning across Fiji, the Philippines, and Australia. Dr. Mary Johnson, I've known for several years, and she's an RMIT Social Research Fellow and fourth-generation farmer, and has worked extensively in agricultural, natural resource management, education and community development within Australia and internationally. Mary's applied research is informed by participatory models of extension, collective action to problem solving, multi-sector collaborations and multilateral partnerships. Mary leads the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research funded research project Landcare, an agricultural extension and community development model at district and national scale in Fiji that adapts learning from a previous 8-year project that improved agricultural extension in conflict-vulnerable areas in the Philippines. Mary farms in southwest Victoria. Over to you, Mary.
Well, thank you, and so lovely to see people from around the world. I'm looking forward to having a really good conversation with you. The project that I'm going to be talking about tonight is a trilateral project between 3 countries. I'm going to concentrate on the learning aspect of this project. There's a lot of complexity towards this project, but I'm just going to concentrate on the learning aspect tonight. So I've called it Learning for Change, Social Learning and Innovation in the Fiji Landcare Life Project. First slide shows the Landcare logo that's being used for this project. And for anybody who isn't familiar with the term Landcare, it was a people's movement that started in Australia back in the 1980s in response to incredible soil and water degradation right across Australia. And groups of farmers came together, supported by government agencies, to try and right the wrongs of prior agricultural practice. So from that came a national movement, if you will, called Landcare, which has actually taken on different forms across other countries in other parts of the world. And forms of Landcare also exist in other countries. So it's farmer groups working with support agencies and people in order to farm more sustainably. Next slide, please. So this is a 6-year collaboration research initiative known as the Fiji Landcare Project. And as Leonie said, it's funded by the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, ACIAR, with the overarching goal of strengthening smallholder farmer livelihoods in Fiji. And smallholder farmers in Fiji are farmers who are probably practicing agriculture on maybe 5 hectares of land. So small land, often in family situations and with very strong social structures behind them. The project itself responds to challenges faced by Fijian farmers, including soil degradation, climate variability, market access, constraints, and really the need for more sustainable food and fibre production systems. Rather than focusing narrowly on technical fixes, although that there's certainly a place for technical innovations, the project adopted a systems-oriented approach. That is, it integrated agricultural productivity, natural resource management, and human capacity development in one go as a system. A defining feature of the project is the collective structure linking farmers, researchers, extension officers, educators, non-farming organisations, and government ministries across Fiji, Philippines, and Australia. So this tri-country partnership enables the sharing of diverse experiences and knowledge systems, which provides for an enriching learning outcome for all participants. What I haven't shared as yet is why the relationship or the partnership with the Philippines. And that's because I'd been working in the Philippines for 8 years in the conflict vulnerable areas of Mindanao on a very similar type of project about working with farmers and extension and all the support agencies that will help smallholder farmers. But what's the best way of doing that? And there were some key themes or principles that came out of that project, which is what the Fiji project is based on. But we come also from an approach of rather than adopting things, we adapt. So Fiji's adapting key principles from the Philippines project to suit their own needs. So the project operates primarily on farm and in community settings, and this ensures that the research activities that take place remain grounded in everyday realities of the farmers. By embedding the learning and the experimentation within these contexts, the project increases the relevance and practicalities and adoption of new practices. Next slide. So we're up to the core purpose of the project is to support approaches that prioritise learning, adaptation. We don't necessarily focus on adoption, it's adaptation, and collaboration. And unlike conventional extension models that rely heavily on, for example, class-based training or one-way knowledge technology transfer, the project deliberately emphasises learning by doing. And that really sits nicely within a farming community because being pragmatic, that's the way farmers learn. Farmers, researchers and extension officers work together to identify challenges. It's basically driven by the farmers and their own localised challenges, although a lot of these challenges replicate across regions, and test solutions and reflect on the outcomes, creating dynamic processes for shared inquiry. This approach recognises that farmers are not simply the recipients of knowledge, but they are skilled practitioners and innovators with valuable local expertise, and that's really important. Learning activities are designed to be non-formal and flexible, allowing farmers to engage in ways that align with their cultural practices, time constraints, and immediate needs. The project also acknowledges that agricultural systems are embedded within broader social, economic, and ecological contexts, and that requires cross-sectorial collaborations as well in sort of iterative problem-solving partnerships. So this learning-oriented approach builds farmers' confidence to question assumptions, equipped with new ideas, and adapts practices over time. Next slide. So it's social learning as the foundation for change. Social learning is understood in this context as learning which emerges through interaction, dialogue, observation, and shared experiences amongst multiple actors. And I've talked about within the project, there are farmers, researchers, extension officers, policy actors. We include a whole gamut of people that have interaction within the agricultural sector. And everybody engages as a co-learner, creating spaces where knowledge flows in multiple ways and multiple directions. This relational configuration helps to break down hierarchies between experts and end users, and it fosters much more mutual respect and trust. Learning is embedded in everyday activities such as farm visits, group discussions, joint problem-solving sessions. The emphasis is on shared sense-making and also supports deeper forms of learning, including changes in attitudes, assumptions, and practices. So when I'm talking about this joint problem-solving with the farming community, when they identify something that they need assistance with or help, that's when they call in extension officers or experts to help them, and it becomes a co-shared problem-solving relationship between all parties. So by strengthening networks and relationships, because we're building networks and relationships as this is progressing, then the social learning processes enables ideas to spread and adapt beyond the immediate project context or sites where we're working. And this contributes to more substantial and systemic forms of change. So it's as much about the farmer groups practicing and learning and doing things, and their neighbours literally looking over the fence and absorbing what's going on as well. It has this organic spread to it. Leonie, could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so experiential learning. The project employs a combination of experiential, reflective, and digital mediated learning processes to support innovation and adaptation. The experiential learning is facilitated through farmer-to-farmer visits, cross-site exchanges, and international study tours. We've had delegations of Fijians travel to Philippines and Philippines travel to Fiji. What's important when we take these delegations is that it's a mix of people. There are farmers, there are policymakers, there are ministerial staff, there are researchers from universities. Anybody who has a role to play within that farmer's learning goes in the delegation. So the delegation's about 15 to 20 people, but we make sure that there's a mix of people there, and it's not just a sort of an homogenized group of people that are going. So everybody's learning together. So the collective reflection provides for structured opportunities for participants to discuss observations, analyse successes and failures, and challenge underlying assumptions. Now, in Fiji, these sessions, collective reflections, are undertaken by farmer groups as a normal practice. They have community groups where the farmers come together and discuss the order of the day. They discuss their issues, their problems, and they do that also with the extension staff that are coming in. So it is actually normal practice, which is really helpful. So experimentation and adaptation are actively encouraged, with participation trialling new techniques and modifying them to suit local ecological and cultural conditions. The farmers have also made use of digital platforms, and this is exactly what we saw happening in the Philippines as well, where groups such as Viber groups, message groups, extend the learning beyond face-to-face encounters. And I'm in the farmer Viber group in Fiji, and as new things are trialed, the farmers put it up immediately. It's in real time that this is happening. Someone is trialing a new variety of bean, and he takes or she takes photos and puts it up on the Viber group, and then all the group members jump in and say, "How did you do that? How does that trestle work?" And so this is happening digitally and driven by the farming community. It was the farmers that actually set these groups up, and it's where a lot of information is transferred and shared. Next slide, please. So collaboration, trust, and enablers of innovation. So effective learning is enabled by strong, as I said, multi-sector collaboration. The project brings together government, ministries, research institutions, farmers, NGOs, and others to address the complexity of the issues together. Trust is not a given. It's not treated as a given, but it's something that must be actively built and maintained throughout repeated interactions, shared experiences, and informal social engagements. So, for example, with any get-together, it always involves a meal and a shared meal, and it's a social thing, and often a lot of good conversations. It's like the conversations that happen at the water cooler or during morning tea. We always make sure that there are shared meals involved with our training and our learning, and also in field visits and social engagements that everybody's partaking in. So by valuing relationships alongside technical outputs, the project demonstrates how innovation can be understood as a social process that unfolds through collaboration rather than as an adoption of discrete technologies. Next slide, please. So key outcomes and lessons learned from the project thus far. The most significant outcomes of the project extend beyond the conventional indicators of yield increases or adoption rates. Instead, many of the most meaningful impacts are relational and capacity-based. Participants develop stronger skills in observation, reflection, and adaptation, enhancing their ability to respond to future challenges such as climate variability. So these are skills, they're legacy skills, which will see them through. The project also strengthens networks amongst farmers, researchers, and extension officers supporting ongoing collaboration beyond the life of the specific activities. And right from the get-go, from the design of these projects in the first instance, always at the forefront of the design was that these funded projects have an end date. So what is the legacy going to be by that end date? What is the aim of the project? And what is going to be left behind that will consistently sustain into the future? The project illustrates how investing in social processes such as trust building, collective reflection, and shared experimentation can generate durable. Will I keep going?
Yes, keep going.
Yeah, can generate durable forms of change. These lessons contribute to broader debates about the role of learning in agricultural development and the need to recognise lifelong learning. And just the last slide there, Leonie, please. So the last slide, hopefully, is one of a big group of people. And that group of people were the Fijian group that visited the Philippines. And amongst that group, there are scientists, farmers, extension officers, researchers, educators, policymakers, a whole spectrum of people, as I described before. When we go in groups, we make sure there's a whole spectrum so that everybody's seeing the same sorts of issues, but from their different perspectives. And so that carries forward to when you have to go back to your day-to-day deeds and you want to talk to the extension officer. Well, they were with you when you saw this thing happen. And so it makes for a much more easier conversation to be had. But it's a snapshot of a much larger project, which is ongoing at the moment. And I hope that I hope I've been able to just describe how important the learning components of this project is, and that learning just doesn't become a side issue to agricultural development. It becomes the main process to agricultural development. So thank you.
I'll stop the sharing now and we can ask questions. And we have one. And I just want to thank you, Mary, very much for that presentation. And I want to apologise because I think I mixed up a few slides there and you couldn't see.
That's all right.
So anyway, I think the people got the gist of it. So that's the main thing.
Yeah.
We have Rob Mark who's got a question. Thanks, Mary, so interesting. I'd like to ask, how much is climate change an issue affecting the learning process in the farming?
Yeah, it's I'll talk about my Fijian farmers. They're very aware of climate change. They're very, of course, they're being impacted by much more severe cyclonic, typhoon type things that hit them, and so they are very aware of that. How they're coping with this, the sorts of learning that we're doing is, for example, crop diversification. What sort of crops are they going to produce and this is what was really surprising for me when I first went over to Fiji about 10 years ago. Not long after, they were in the middle of the Pacific drought. And this was a tropical country being hit by drought. So it's not just cyclones and flooding they're experiencing, they're also experiencing drought. So the farmers are looking for different technologies and diversification of crops. There's been with the deforestation of Fiji, There's been huge impact when it does rain, when there is torrential rain, there's an enormous loss of topsoil that goes with it. And so that doesn't just impact the farmers themselves, it's now impacting all the reef systems around the island, or islands. There are multiple islands, and fishing, and of course, Fiji relies on tourism and beautiful blue waters. Well, they're not so very blue when, they're turning red because of the topsoil running out there. So the farmers are very interested in knowing or having options around what risk management strategies can they take on board, in order to help them in their different places. We've got 3 sites in Fiji, one site on the main island, another site over at Labasa, the second, and then Taveuni. And they all have different, they are all impacted differently by climate change, but the farmers are well aware of that. And so by bringing farmers together in collective learning circles with researchers from Fiji National University or the University of the South Pacific, and also the Ministry of Agriculture, and also the Ministry of Forestry and the Ministry of Health, because this is impacting on their diets. They're losing a lot of nutritious food. Then creating those enabling environments and those networks are going to help them reach out, be confident to reach back in and work with researchers on the sorts of things that they can pursue.
Yeah. If I can just maybe comment, thank you for the very, very interesting presentation. I can see it's marvelous work you've done, and I'm sure the people in Fiji are benefiting a lot from the input, not just from yourself, but all these agencies brought together, which is exactly what Pascal tries to do. I was involved with it. If I'm just for a minute mention something else that I was involved with the university in Ireland in Maynooth, because I'm based in Dublin at the minute in Ireland. And a few years ago, they got funding from Irish Aid, which is one of the organisations that helps the third world countries. And they were able to work with Zambia and Malawi in Africa, and a third country, I'm trying to remember which it was. And they developed a training program which became a master's program in lifelong learning and climate change. That's why I mentioned the climate change.
That's
And
very
I was interested in this because I worked in lifelong learning all my life, but I hadn't maybe been just so much focused on climate change. So I'm a geographer, so I do know a lot about climate.
yeah.
But I was then asked to be the external examiner to this program, and I went out to Africa, to Zambia and to Malawi, and I saw the work that they were doing, and they were able, through this working with universities, they were able to set up this master's program.
Mhm.
And I was amazed the throughput on it. And this was about 5 years ago, by the way. And I was at Maynooth just recently a few times, and I was asking them, and they said, yes, it's still going. They handed it over to the people. Of course, that's a much bigger scenario because it's several countries and bigger countries. Fiji's an island, smaller island. But I just wondered whether there's any desire to have qualification or anything from the people, or is it something that whether you've thought about or anything as a sort of extension of this, where people could work into some kind of qualification, or is that not seen as relevant really or important?
Um, I guess from the farmers' point of view, Mark, Rob, they're not so. The groups that we've been working with haven't been so interested in a qualification. They've been interested in getting the information in a way that they can utilize and make use of. What is really interesting and really key is the capacity building of the extension officers who are working with them. Now, they would be interested in qualification. And so we've set up, while we're working with the farmers on tailoring training courses for each and each locality because it'll be slightly different. At the same time, we're capacity building the institutions that are supporting the farmers, and there's actually a great need to do that. So we identified with the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, the sorts of skills that the extension officers needed, and so we've been doing that. But we've also been bringing in, for example, the Ministry of I2K Affairs. I2K is the Fijian Affairs, Indigenous Affairs, and they play a really strong role in farming communities. So they come in as well. So it's the farmers themselves just want the information. They're pragmatic, they're facing things every day and they want to, but they are interested and they absorb like sponges anything that's going around them. But I think it's the institutions that are around them that are supporting them that would be interested in, say, a masterclass. And there's another ACIAR project which is just about to be funded, which we've said we'll partner with because they're going to be working with the Ministry of Agriculture in all things to do with meteorology. Now, this is an interesting one for the farmers because a bit like the Australian farmers, whenever there's bad weather coming, we always look at the Met Bureau. We look up the Met app and see what's happening. There is the same sort of application in Fiji, but it's in a language that, I mean, it's in scientific language, so if it's those sorts of things that need to be really worked on.
Thanks. So it's not for everyone, but some people may benefit from having, some acknowledgement of the learning that they've done, in some way. It doesn't have to be at a master's level or anything, but particularly younger people, I also wanted to ask you about the gender of farmers, because what surprised me in Africa was most of the farmers were women.
Yeah,
Which is exactly what I didn't expect. Well, a lot of them anyway, quite a high percentage. How is it in Fiji?
Yes, but the land tenure is not in the name of women. It's a bit of a joke. Just rounding off, sorry, on your last question, we also work with students at the University of Fiji National University, master's students and PhD students, and we encourage them to set up their projects working with our farming community. So we're trying to get that generational networking happening. And because what we did find when we first started working over there was that it was very siloed, very siloed. It's an incredibly networked country. It's about population of 900,000 people, very networked, very social. But when it came to professional things, everybody was very siloed, but that's just historically the way it was. Anyway, so working on generationally, yes, we are looking at youth as much as we are with farmers. Gender, women and men work alongside each other, tend to in Fiji. They'll both have their sort of roles to play in a farming system. It might be that and I understand what you're saying about Africa. It might be that the men will go out and do the heavy work, whereas the women might be tending the plant nurseries and the seedlings and things like that. But it's very strong family approach to farming. One thing I will say is that in recent years, in the Pacific, we've had the palm schemes set up by Australian and New Zealand governments, and that's just a labour force scheme where it's Palm Pacific Islander labour force scheme where labour from the Pacific Islands comes to Australia to work in vegetable or harvesting or whatever, wherever they're working. But what I've noticed under that, and then they send remittance funds back to the islands. Okay, what I've seen happen is that some of the villages where we've been working, they're now becoming hollowed out because all the young men and women over in New Zealand or mainly Australia working in jobs to send money back, but all the community gardens which produce the nutritious food, there's nobody to tend them anymore. And yes, there's more income going back into Fiji, but now Fiji is rated as one of the highest countries in the world for diabetes because people have turned to processed foods. And yeah, I can see why this is happening because there just isn't the labour force there. There's also a drift of rural labourers to the urban areas and getting work within tourism as well. But things like that happening everywhere.
Thanks very much, Mary. We've got another question from Caroline. Caroline, do you want to come and talk to your question, please? Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was muted. Yeah. Yeah, of course I would, but I can tell that your project is obviously an adult orientated project, but a lot of those adults might have small children. And I suppose in Cornwall, West Devon, where we've got a lot of focus of agriculture and growing that's happening over old mine waste, I'm trying to get whole families with very small children to get involved in like raking around the soil and understanding what grows, all of that. I just think the sooner you can get the tinies in and the grannies, the whole generation, it becomes a stronger thing. But that's just what we're finding.
Yeah, no, really good point. And Fijians are very, very family minded, very strong family ties. So we do have the youngsters there and the grannies. In fact,
Great.
takes a yeah, they're great. And we're looking that the Fijians are thinking about setting up, or they've already started it actually, junior Landcare in some of the primary schools. So that's their own initiative to do.
So I would kind of like to share with you as we go. This is really, really early days with us, and we only discovered about Pascal and learning cities and everything through Michael Osborne. Do you know Professor
Yes.
Michael Osborne? Right. I went to school with Michael Osborne. I was in the same class when we were 11, which is mad. And it's all his fault that I'm here, that I'm talking. But we are working on a concept which we were out doing on the ground every day this last week called Learn to Tread Lightly.
Yeah.
And it's like families learning how to do these things right. And it's not going to be a master's, but it is going to be something you can get a kind of stamp on and a recognition for. And I'd be more than delighted to kind of share it because one day I want to come to Australia and maybe Fiji.
I'd be delighted to see it.
Well, I'd love to share. So, do I get? I don't know if I get your email address in this circulation, but anybody that wants to know what we're doing, just give me an email address, basically.
Yeah. Oh, Leonie,
I'll put mine in, shall I? If I put mine in,
it's okay, Caroline. I've got your email. I think I can.
Okay.
At the end of this, and when I have time in the next week, I will. If the recording went okay, we'll get the recording and also the presentation, and I'll. If everyone's okay, I'll share everyone's emails because I think everyone on this Zoom knows each other, so that's fine. No privacy issues there. So
Brilliant, brilliant.
And
Sorry, one final thing. I also recognize the food element, the shared eating, drinking is so powerful as your motivator binding, all these learnings together, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've been particularly mindful of is the cultural, societal component of farming. And in Fiji, for example, well, I'll start with Australia. In Australia, our Indigenous people talk about caring for country and their spiritual connection to country. In Fiji, it's called the vanua. It's the same connection to the land and the sea and the water, and that spiritual connection and how so very important. I see the same in the Philippines, and no doubt all of you will have come across this in various forms in various countries. But right from the get-go, again, we've respected that, so that when we are working with our farming groups and communities, their approaches to some of the farming systems take in traditional ways of farming, but it is this vanua, it is this spiritual connection which plays a really important role in everybody's thinking and approach.
Lovely. Thank you.
okay, we've got
that
another.
Annie,
Sorry, Mark. Rob.
I was going to say, I think Annie in our group that looks at the spiritual issues would be delighted to talk to you about that, because she's very good at building these bridges across things, and sometimes the spiritual side is pushed out of everything as if it's something from outside or ongoing development. But for people that live in these traditional communities, it's very important, and the understanding of how it connects to the land
Yes.
and all of that. So I think that's important. And just while I'm on, I think my last point that I'll make, I was wondering about this connection with the urban areas, which I know that Leonie is very interested in, to bring the connection back between the urban and the rural. And I suppose I was thinking about these cities which have gardens, or allotments and things for people to do farming and that. I saw some of them here in Dublin yesterday, and there are very many allotments in Glasgow. It's been a very long tradition in Glasgow, which is quite an urban area, and it's a kind of mini farming. People that don't get out of the city, even though they live in a lovely country, they don't often get out, particularly the people in poverty. So I just wonder whether you wanted to say anything about that, firstly in relation to Fiji, whether there's a connection, or even with Australia, or your experience in linking the urban and the rural.
I did see one thing that Mary mentioned was the same thing that Professor Edu has said in the past, that youth are going from the rural to the urban. So there's that youth troop happening, isn't there, Mary? So that's one connection. But obviously, the people in the urban areas have to get their food from somewhere.
Yeah. I think what really refocused people on the importance of backyard or kitchen gardens, if you will, or backyard garden, even backyard commons. What really refined focus or refocus everyone was COVID. And for Fiji, because there'd been quite a lot of movement of rural people into urban areas of Suva and Nandi, they just immediately switched and started gardening, because they'd learned how to garden in the rural areas. They knew what to do, and they were still pretty connected, and they were still travelling back to their villages pre-COVID, and had that connection. So when COVID hit, everybody knew what to do. And exactly the same thing happened in the Philippines, in the areas that I was working there in Mindanao, that people knew how to garden. And so they were able to, help fend for themselves, but also that networking and the community structures and social structures of sharing as well. So that came into it. But as far as and that stayed, yeah. I mean, COVID was several years ago now, but it stayed, and people are still gardening even in urban areas, and there's still that connection. I'm not so sure that we've got as strong a connection within Australia anymore between urban and regional, but you might have something to say about that. Annie.
Mary, there is one other question, a couple of questions from Sharon. Do you want to raise your points now? I wanted to finish this about 5 to 9 our time in about 4 minutes' time, so this will be rounding off the questions. Sharon.
Thanks, Leonie. Just I wanted to acknowledge the photos, obviously showing the land carers there. So really beautiful use of photos. So really helped, being immersed in that presentation. So thank you for including those. I guess it's really just around that sort of trust-based collaboration, informal learning, and the use of digital tools, and I guess how they supported that in the project.
Yeah. So through social learning and look, through the very act of sharing a meal, there's an enormous amount of trust that is exchanged there. I'm sharing my food and you're going to eat it. You're trusting me to have something that's healthy and not going to poison me, and also the cultural values that go with that. But it's also in enabling an environment where the hierarchy, where hierarchies are somewhat broken down, so we don't have this expert end user exists. We come together and we say everybody is valued at the table with what they bring. And so at first people were a little unsure about that sort of mix, but very, very quickly they got right into it. And especially when we were going to doing farmer-to-farmer visits or taking people from one side of the country to the other, which they hadn't done, but mixing that group up. So we literally had the directors of the Ministry of Agriculture sitting alongside farmers sharing a meal. And it's nothing like that where you start to talk about your family and your football team and things like that. It's all the social interactions. That's why the social learning is so important, that starts to break things down to a point where this person's okay. They might be very senior, but they're okay. They had the same sort of problems that I do. And that trust starts to be built. And that happens over a period of time too. So it's that which is which really goes to, but being conscious of it too, Sharon, knowing that that's it's a very deliberate. I'm not trying to make friends with getting people to make friends. I'm just enabling, having an environment where people don't feel any disempowerment or empowerment that's happening. And very quickly people like working within that and like approaching problems and the same. It was interesting to see the researchers from the soil scientists and the plant health people from Fiji National University who would previously go out and visit farms, do things, and then go back to the university and in their labs. But we said, okay, farmers, have you been to one of these laboratories? No, come on, let's go and have a look and see. And more over time, those friendships have grown, and it's generating a lot more research. The researchers are finding that they're now really doing research that the farmers actually want, and it's useful. So it has that too. I've rambled on a bit, so hope I've answered what you were.
Thank you.
That's really amazing. And I've got comments from Professor Catherine Lido, who's well, you can introduce yourself, Catherine, and talk about what you've just said on your chat.
Yes, I just didn't want to leave without saying that we're here if anybody isn't a member of Pascal and wants to know more, or we've got Esra here, who's our new Learning Cities Network coordinator, taking over from Rob after Rob's amazing decade-long service. And I've stepped up for Mike upon his retirement for his Pascal Director Europe, but also currently the administrative hub for Pascal. So we are here if you need any more information. We now have a new link to join as an associate member or as a regional member. So just get in touch if we can do anything. But that was really inspirational. What a lovely presentation for a sunny day in Scotland, a very rare sunny day for Esra and myself.